Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. This weekend, British Columbians will change our clocks for the very last time. Premier David Eby announced BC is permanently adopting daylight time, which would add more daylight hours to the afternoons. The announcement is getting mixed reaction, though. We're asking, what do you think of BC ending the time change and moving to daylight time year-round? Plus, we talk more about access to recreation. So from pools to pickleball courts, what's needed in your community to promote active living? That's after 12:30. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. You can call us now. What do you think of BC ending the time change and moving to year-round daylight time? You can call us 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733, or 1-800-825-5950. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. First, some news today on the Tumbler Ridge tragedy. BC's chief coroner has announced an inquest into last month's mass shooting. Dr. Jatinder Baidwan says the inquest will look at the circumstances around the 9 deaths. On February 10th, Jessie Van Rootselaar shot and killed her mother, an 11-year-old half-brother at their home, before killing 5 students, an education assistant, and then herself at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. Baidwan said the inquest will also look into how people in crisis are identified and into access to mental health supports and services in rural and remote communities.
The tragedy in Tumbler Ridge prompted widespread discussions about mental health, public safety, and how future loss of life may be prevented. I've reflected carefully and deeply on the events in Tumbler Ridge, on what led up to them, what took place, and the impact that followed, and continues to do so. That reflection has underscored for me the unique role that the coroner's service plays in examining deaths openly, thoroughly, and in a way that maintains public confidence. In keeping with that role and recognizing the questions and concerns being raised by the community across British Columbia and throughout the country, I have decided to call an inquest, and I'm announcing that decision today. Pursuant to Section 18 of the Coroners Act, I'm directing a coroner's inquest to publicly review the events that led to 9 individuals losing their lives in Tumbler Ridge on February the 10th. An inquest will provide an open, independent forum to examine the circumstances surrounding these 9 deaths, identify any systemic or procedural issues, and make evidence-based recommendations aimed at preventing similar loss of life in the future. A key area of examination will be how individuals in crisis are identified and supported, including access to mental health supports and services in rural and remote and small communities across British Columbia, such as crisis intervention and wraparound supports. This will include consideration of how mental health services and public safety systems work together to support people experiencing complex mental health crises, including broader issues of community awareness, education and support, and matters relating to gender diversity where relevant to the evidence. The inquest will also review emergency response and coordination, including law enforcement and medical response, communication with families and the school community, and opportunities to strengthen preparedness and response in rural settings. Where relevant, the inquest may also consider other systemic factors that emerge through the evidence that we will hear, including how mental health and public safety systems intersect with firearms oversight, and how information is shared between online platforms, emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, and law enforcement.
Dr. Jatinder Baidwan is BC's chief coroner. Now, the coroner's inquest is not expected to start until the RCMP wraps up their investigation. For more on the story, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/BC. 12:11 now. You're with BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, yesterday the province announced that BC would be moving to permanent daylight time after the time jumps forward on Sunday. And that's after years of saying that BC would wait for the Western United States like Washington to make the move. Premier David Eby says the move will help improve people's health and reduce disruptions caused by the time changes. Yukon and Saskatchewan have already changed. But there is mixed reaction. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business says that the announcement comes as a surprise. It risks causing confusion and appears to be an attempt to distract from the province's $13 billion deficit. Well, we're taking your calls. What do you think of the province ending the time change? So this weekend will be the last time. What do you think of the move to permanent daylight time? Do you prefer more afternoon daylight, which is what this change would bring about? You can give us a call, 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733, or 1-800-825-5950. You can also just hit pound 690 on your cell phone or email bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining me is Wendy Hall, a professor emeritus at UBC School of Nursing. Good afternoon, Wendy. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us. Afternoon, morning. It's hard to keep track now of what the time will actually be. You know, it's interesting. Each year, I think to myself, okay, is this debate going to come up as we approach the spring forward time? Does this, will it reappear again, resurface? And here we are talking about it, but with a pretty big development this time around. What do you think about the change announced just yesterday?
Well, Michelle, I'm really concerned about it, and so are sleep experts from around the country. I belong to a group called the Consortium for Daylight Savings Time Committee, and we have sleep experts from across Canada, and we are not in favor of going to permanent daylight savings time.
Why is that?
Well, we know that permanent daylight savings time can induce what we call social jet lag. And what we mean by that is that our bodies have circadian rhythms, and the circadian rhythm in our body affects all aspects of our body. It affects when we secrete hormones, it affects our digestion, it affects all the elements of the body. And circadian rhythms in humans are about 24.2 hours in length. So our circadian rhythm time runs a little bit longer than the 24-hour clock, and we really need to have exposure to morning light, preferably natural light, daylight, to help us reset our circadian rhythms for that day. So what we're concerned about is that DST, or daylight savings time, increases our exposure to light in the evening, but it links to morning darkness, and that can induce a phase delay, which pushes our sleep time later, which then results in what we call social jet lag, because we still have to get up at the same time in the morning when we have to go to work and school, etc.
What we heard from the premier yesterday was that, you know, people are kind of split on this. There was that 2019 online survey, a vote by the province, and it found 93% of participants wanting to move to permanent daylight time, although switching to permanent standard time, which would be having more of that morning daylight, wasn't an option. But, you know, you think about 223,000 people, those still voting, and then 93% of them saying, yes, okay, move to daylight time. What do you make of the public opinion on this?
Well, I wrote a letter to Premier John Horgan at the time and expressed my concern about the nature of the survey, because basically, although 93% of British Columbians said they were in favor of not having a time change twice a year, the only option that was offered to them as an alternative was permanent daylight savings time. There was no option offered for standard time. So I think it's a little bit of misrepresentation to suggest that British Columbians were all in favor of permanent daylight savings time when that was not, there was no other option offered.
Okay, so you're saying it still doesn't make the case for it. I just want to go through, on our website before our callers here, we have this very useful chart. So if you go to cbc.ca/BC, it's a chart based on the National Research Council's sunrise and sunset calculator. So it says that, for example, if you live in Vancouver or Nanaimo, this would mean that in December, the latest sunrise would be an hour later, just after 9 a.m. Right now, in December, you would have it at 8 a.m. But of course, you get more sunlight later in the day as well. Sunset would be at 5:14. If you're in Prince George and Port Hardy, a December sunrise would be as late as 9:32 a.m. And lucky folks up in Prince Rupert, your latest sunrise would be 10 a.m. What do you think of that, Wendy?
I looked all that up. So I have also looked at that.
And what was going through your mind when you did?
What was going through my mind was, oh, that would be so depressing to get up in the morning at whatever time we get up for school for the day or work, say 6:30 or 7 a.m., and not see any sunlight until, in the case of Prince Rupert, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, well, let's take some calls now and ask you, is that something that you would like to see? We are moving to daylight time is what it's called, and Pacific time is what the time zone is going to be. Asking you what you make of the change, ending the time change in BC and sticking to year-round daylight time. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. My guest is Wendy Hall, a pediatric sleep researcher and professor emeritus at UBC School of Nursing. Patricia is calling us, from Cranbrook, where there's a kind of a unique situation. Hi, Patricia.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for calling in. What do you make of this change? And what does it mean for Cranbrook?
I just think that if we're going to say that all of BC is doing it, then we should have all of BC do it.
Okay.
It just, like, we're already on Alberta time, like Mountain Standard Time.
Yes.
So we should just include all of the province if we're going to publicly say that all of BC is changing.
That's so interesting. So you would be okay with moving away from what the Kootenays do now, which is going along in line with Alberta. You would be okay with moving to standard time as the rest of the province does, or as much of the province does.
I would very much love for all of BC to be on the same time, because I work for FedEx in Cranbrook, and we deal with quite a few places that are in the province that have an hour time difference ahead of us already.
Yes.
So just flip-flopping between the two, where everybody stays the same, could create some problems for a lot of businesses that have to deal with each other in the same province.
I hear you. That's something that some of the businesses have raised for sure, Patricia. Thank you very much. The impact on someone working for FedEx in Cranbrook, the differences depending on the region that you're in. She says just make it all the same around BC. Let's go up to Terrace now, and Richard is on the line. Hi, Richard. What do you think of the end of the clock change and the move to permanent daylight time?
Hi, how are you? Every year we're inundated with statistics saying how many accidents there are, how many people miss days of work, et cetera, and how much the actual cost is. It's actually pretty astronomical. So my point is this: the cows and the chickens are able to handle the daylight. Fine. Why can't we do it? If you have to if you need more daylight for work, get up a little bit later, or vice versa. On the other half of the year, stay up a little later.
So you're okay with it?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's silly. I mean, let's face it. Before we had daylight savings time, that's when people functioned. You went up and down with the sun, right?
Right. It's just about adapting.
Yeah, and as far as businesses go, well, that's just a matter of adaptation. I mean, Saskatchewan hasn't had daylight savings time since the very beginning.
Richard, yeah, interesting point. Thank you very much. Let me go back to Wendy on that. Yes, can people just adapt?
Well, there's not very good evidence for that. They looked at 55,000 adults in Germany who were on daylight savings time, and they found even after months on daylight savings time, they were losing an average of 30 minutes of sleep a day. And I think it's really interesting what Richard said about sun time, because when we're on standard time, we are on sun time. Our bodies are reacting to sun time. when we go on daylight savings time, we're no longer on sun time. We're advancing sun time through what we do with the clocks. So it's actually his line of argument about cows doing it and chickens doing it is more reasonable for standard time than it is for daylight savings time.
So, since this seems to be going forward, what are some things people can do then to help them along the way?
Well, I'm a little worried about children going to school in the morning in the dark in the winter months. So give their children a really strong flashlight and try and make sure they understand about the increased risks of going out in the dark to go to school. Have some campaigns increasing people's awareness of traffic safety. We know already we have a lot of accidents in BC. And we particularly have a lot of accidents when it's raining and dark and there's snow or ice. And that is going to be the time when we have later sunrise. And so we need to really make an effort to educate drivers about how important it is to be careful, because when your sun's not coming up till 10 a.m., that's a lot of time for commuting when you're going to be in the dark. And really, I don't know what to do about adolescents, because they're going to be in a really difficult position with this. There's research out of counties in the U.S. that went to permanent daylight savings time, and they found that the graduation rate went down for high school students, and they did worse at exams and testing. And we know that adolescents already have social jet lag associated with the developmental changes in their bodies. And what switching to daylight saving time is going to do permanently is going to make that worse for them.
We have an email from Lisa who writes, I'm disappointed that it is DST that will be permanent when there is so much research and documentation that demonstrates it's much healthier to be on standard time. And Lisa goes on to write about the survey that the Premier is referring to from 2019. Thank you so much for that email. And Deborah writes as well, I'm a shift worker and I can say it is so depressing to wake up in the dark and go to work in the dark. I'd rather stay in standard time so that the high noon truly is high noon. Deb, thank you for your email too, bctoday@cbc.ca. On the line, Dan is joining us now from Cranbrook. Hi, Dan. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. I certainly agree with your guest today on daylight, the whole daylight saving time and that fraudulent survey that I participated in, with maybe some regret now, because it seemed the only way of getting rid of the time change. But I would say of our Premier Eby saying he's giving us more daylight, in making that statement and having some people accept it, he has out-trumped Trump. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that President Trump is pushing out all the time, and his supporters gobble it up, and it's ridiculous.
What is it that...
The idea that he's giving we the people more daylight by pushing advancing the clock. I mean, there's only so much daylight. And I mean, and if it's true though, if we are seen as benefiting by advancing from local noon, by making local noon 1 p.m., if that's a positive, well, why don't we just go from there? Why don't we go ahead another 3 hours and make local noon actually 3 p.m.? I mean, it's pathetically ridiculous.
That ridiculous too. Yeah. Okay.
But the sad, your guest has mentioned, the grimmer aspect to this is the school children walking to school in winter. And what I believe will happen, I hope it doesn't take a couple of traffic tragedies to bring this about, but I think responsible, proactive parents will ensure that schools go on to winter hours. It will be adopted by educational institutions.
So that would be like a later start or something like that?
Well, it'd just be switching back to standard time for winter. So for, December, January, early February, there'd be separate winter hours that would have the start dates made later.
You know, it's an interesting idea, Dan, and I think that's another place to go for our discussion as well, is to ask schools how this might affect the school day. Thank you very much for the call. Cam is next in Cobble Hill. Hi, Cam.
Hello, yes. Yeah, I'm happy that it got changed one way or the other because it just drove me crazy. I think it's actually, and I've never heard this, it's an economic boost for the province because you're going to have people out in the evenings going like to baseball games and doing different things because the hours are longer. They're going to be spending more money.
Yeah, interesting point as well. More time in the evenings for that activity. That is what the Premier was referring to as well, as the sun set would be an hour later. Cam, thank you for the call from Cobble Hill. This is BC Today. We're taking your calls on the province ending the time change. So this weekend's Spring Forward will be the last time, and we are moving to permanent daylight time. So that would give more daylight at the end of the day, and as opposed to the mornings, especially during the winter months. Asking you what you make of the change, and what do you make of the change to daylight time year round? Give us a call, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950, or hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Taking your emails as well, bctoday@cbc.ca. It is 12:27. Let's go to our next caller now. Corinne is in North Vancouver. Hi, Corinne. What do you make of this change?
Oh, hi there. Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that I'm really happy going on to daylight savings time permanently. I don't need the sun coming up at 4 in the morning in the summer, and I would much prefer having an extra hour of daylight in the afternoon in the winters, for sure. If you're getting up in the dark in the winter, the hour isn't going to make much difference to me anyway, so I just wanted to say I'm happy.
Yeah. Thank you very much for registering that with us, Corinne. Thank you for the call. Greg is next now in Victoria as we take your call, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. What do you make of the changing the time change? Greg, go ahead.
Hi, Michelle. I am just really kind of disappointed to start with that we got this sprung on us after a very biased survey done 7 years ago now. And with, as you know, been very, well presented, the research showing that it is not a good choice. The fact that it was an artificial construct to start with, if you were going to change to a single time zone, going back to the standard time really is the one that really, to me, makes the most sense. I think there's going to be issues with mental health, particularly in the winter. And I think, as discussed with some of the other people, getting, the kids up and around school and all that kind of thing is going to be, quite arduous. And I think they need to rethink the whole thing and maybe make some changes going towards the fall.
Thank you so much for the call. Very good to hear from you, Greg, in Victoria. Let me go back to Wendy Hall. We've heard different opinions here. You talked about the potential effects on kids going to school. What about work? What can workplaces do to prepare for this as we have, a few months before the time would have changed in November?
I think it's going to be difficult because there are more workplace accidents associated with DST. And also, social jet lag is associated with more risk of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, smoking, alcohol consumption, and caffeine consumption, and a higher incidence of mental health problems. So I think workplaces are going to be struggling a bit with this. In patients with major depressive disorder and bipolar depression, treatment with morning light actually ameliorates the symptoms, while excessive light before bedtime can increase depressive symptoms. So, it's very interesting. We're in a situation here where we have a lot of challenges with adolescents' health and well-being, and in terms of mental health and the impact of the social media. We have a situation where healthcare costs are costing more and more for the province every year. And here we are looking at adopting a system that is actually has more health risks associated with it, and could actually increase absenteeism for workplaces?
It's getting a lot of reaction. I can see lots of emails coming in as well. Wendy Hall, always good to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Michelle, and I hope you have a good rest of your show.
Yeah, thank you. I thought you were going to say, I hope you have some good rest.
That too.
Yeah, that would have been on brand. That's Wendy Hall is a sleep researcher and professor emeritus at UBC's School of Nursing. I've got lots of emails on this, and I'll bring them to you in our next half hour as well. Thanks for sending your thoughts. BC Today at cbc.ca. And we're going to talk about access to recreation in your communities. Yeah, we'll keep on this thread of health and wellness, and we'll talk about what are the facilities that would encourage healthy, active living in your community. We'll talk to a Burnaby councillor in a few moments as well. Right now, it is time for a CBC News update, and here's Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. BC's chief coroner has announced a public inquest into the mass shooting in Tumbler Ridge. Dr. Jatinder Baidwan says it will be a long journey to healing in the wake of the shooting. He says the inquest will examine several factors in the lead up and aftermath of the tragedy and make recommendations to prevent similar events from happening. BC has expanded its compensation coverage for firefighters in the province by adding 8 cancers to the list of eligible illnesses. The province says the additions to the list of diseases presumed to be linked to the work done by firefighters make BC the most comprehensively covered Canadian province. And drivers in Nanaimo will again have to pay for street parking in the downtown core. The fees were lifted for a number of years while there was heavy construction in the area. The cost will be $1.25 an hour. But Nanaimo City Hall says street parking will be free after 5 and on Sundays. And now the forecast on the north coast. Periods of rain this afternoon with strong winds and a high of 8. Highs to -12 with periods of snow in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, periods of rain with a high of 6. Highs up to 10 degrees and mainly cloudy this afternoon in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, mainly cloudy with a high of 9. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, periods of rain this afternoon with highs around 11. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. And yes, so many emails and thoughts on the province ending the time change and moving to permanent daylight time. Kathy writes, I lived in the Yukon for 15 years and our fall and winter was always getting up in the dark in the morning since the sun doesn't show up till 10 or 11 most of winter. I don't think we were all depressed or sleep deprived. We seem to adjust just fine. An extra hour of daylight in the evening is a blessing. I'm very supportive of this. Anne writes, I'm really happy here in the West Kootenays about staying on daylight time. Instead of it being dark before 4, I can go out until almost 5. Bring it on. Kevin writes, honest question, why couldn't they have met in the middle and go between the 2 times, half hour? And as well, Pam writes, I welcome not having to change time in the spring and fall, but I wish that the change was to remain on standard time. I don't like getting up in the dark. I enjoy my mornings and don't see the point in having more daylight during the winter evenings. Summer is already long days and could easily accommodate an hour less of sunlight. Joe writes, people are overlooking the fact that everyone working will get off work an hour earlier. What's wrong with that? Geez, I welcome not having to change the time in the spring and the fall, but I wish the change was to remain on standard time. Pardon me, that's an email from a different emailer as well. We're getting so many of them. And Michelle writes as well, big vote for moving to standard time for all the reasons your guest is making very clear. More daylight in the morning would make it safer for pedestrians, especially kids going to school and cyclists who will have to deal with another hour of LED headlight glare that we now know is blinding. Thanks for your thoughts. BC Today at cbc.ca. 12:35 now. You're with BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks for being with us. And we continue our discussions on physical activity and access to fitness and recreation. We've been talking about children and schools here on the show. Today, we're going to look at access in our community. Last week, Port Moody announced plans to expand rec facilities, including plans for its first indoor pool. Kelowna is replacing the Parkinson Recreation Centre with a new state-of-the-art facility. In Burnaby, the new Burnaby Lake and Cameron Rec Centres are under construction. In Vancouver, though, a report from September showed that recreation facilities in the city are in poor shape. Well, we're asking you, from pools to trails, gyms to pickleball courts, what kinds of recreation spaces are needed in your community, and how do you use recreation facilities? You can give us a call now, 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733, or 1-800-825-5950. You can also send us an email, bctoday@cbc.ca. And if you're with us on TikTok, you can leave a comment there. My guest is Daniel Tetrault, a Burnaby City Councillor and the chair of that city's Parks and Recreation Committee. And he's here in studio with me. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for being here. I live in Burnaby. And I know of these construction projects. I see the cranes along Kensington Avenue just about every day. I use many of the facilities. I took my kids to C.G. Brown for swim lessons. Tell me, about the thinking behind this push for I guess, upgrading and building new facilities in Burnaby.
Yeah, as our city grows and as there's more demand, we need to keep up with amenities, and that's why we're taking a very ambitious and aggressive approach to this, and to meet the needs of the community now and also 10, 20, 30 years from now. And so, as you mentioned, we have the Burnaby Lake Aquatic Center, which should open in 2028. And that I got a tour of that a couple weeks ago, and it's massive, and it'll be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, aquatic center in BC, and one of the biggest in Canada.
What's it going to cost?
The costs are, it's not cheap, and I would say it's. I think we focus too much on costs, and we need to look at it more as an investment. As when we don't build now, it costs more every year, and some of these facilities probably could have been built 10, 20, 30 years ago, and that would have actually saved money for our taxpayers. But
how much is the investment?
The aquatic center is over $200 million, but again, this is going to be Olympic-sized pool, so it's great from the competition standpoint, but also from the leisure standpoint. It's meant for families, for kids, and it's going to offer everything.
How do you make the case that, I know you're touching on that now, but how do you make the case this is worth the $200 million for a new pool and broader costs when it comes to recreation?
So I think it's careful long-term planning and careful engagement with the public to see what's wanted, what's needed. And we've heard loud and clear from the public that they want really fantastic recreation and community facilities, because we know that these places they're a community hub. They're places where people go for their activities, but also to socialize. I'll give an example. When I take my 4-year-old for swimming lessons, I go during that half an hour, I take a hot tub of steam, and every time there's the same people there. They know each other by name. They're complete strangers, but they know each other by name. Yeah. They're there for their activity, and they're there to socialize. They talk about their families, their health, sometimes politics, and it's truly the hub for them, and it's accessible, it's affordable, and we need to make sure that we provide that for our community.
Well, that's a great way to segue into my next question, which is, what are the kinds of spaces that are well used, that do serve the community well?
Well, I think, when I talk about investments and costs, we've also been very strategic and creative in our building. And for example, during COVID, we purchased the 40th Center, which is the Christine Sinclair Community Center. Anecdotally, maybe our most popular community center and well used. It's busy. And things like the sports boxes. So recognizing that it rains, like look outside, it rains a lot, 6 months of the year. And so these outdoor sports boxes are available all year round. And if you go to one of them, they're buzzing from pickleball to lacrosse to basketball and all ages. And so and they're a lot more economical in the sense of operating them. And we're looking at other cities looking at that model.
You know, it's interesting. If you could just explain what a sports box is. I know because I go to Confederation Park and I see them there. I hear the basketballs, but can you explain what it is?
So it's a large covered multi-sport box. And so they have lines where you can play lacrosse. They have lines where you can do pickleball, and then there's basketball hoops, and then there's net. And then there's a schedule of what takes priority during the day of that sport, and it's up to the community to use it appropriately. And so far it's been a big success. If
you thought pickleball was a fleeting trend, it apparently is not.
It is not, and we recognize that. And we have, my understanding is we have the most pickleball courts per capita in BC and maybe Canada. Right? And we have some major pickleball hubs.
Let's take some calls here. We're asking you, wherever you live in the province, what are the recreation spaces that are needed or that are well used in your community? And how do you use your own community's recreation facilities? What would you like to see if something's missing? Give us a call, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. Or just hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email us to bctoday@cbc.ca. Let's head to beautiful Parksville. And Rhonda is on the line. Hi, Rhonda.
Hello. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes. What are the recreation or community spaces that would promote healthy living where you live?
Well, for me and other people with mobility issues that have lost access to many of the trails we used to be able to walk on because they've been graveled. What I need, and what many other people I've talked to that either have knee issues like I do, or are walking with walkers or wheelchairs, we cannot now go to those graveled trails. And so I'm only left with two places I can walk anymore. That have natural ground. So natural ground is great. Natural ground with small bark mulch, not the big chips.
Right.
It's just lovely. Or even smooth pavement. And because Parksville is about to build a new trail, I understand, from Englishman River, I think from the estuary, maybe up the river. I'm not quite sure where it's going, but I so hope it will be pavement or natural ground.
Really good point, Rhonda. Thank you very much. Yes, how important is it to consider accessibility?
Absolutely, and with some of our older facilities, they're not as accessible as we'd like, and we've made some changes there. But with all our new facilities, accessibility is a priority. And in our outdoor facilities too, we make sure that there's careful consultation, engagement with folks in the accessibility community, and we actually have a accessibility committee that advises on all of our parks, recs, facilities, and trails.
And an important point to make, even just the surface, right? Whether it's going to be gravel or dirt or pavement, those kinds of
every detail is essential and important.
Yeah, let's take another call here. Rhonda, thank you so much for that call. 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. Let's go to Port Coquitlam now, and Mia is calling us. Hi, Mia. How important are community recreation spaces? What do you think is needed?
Oh, hi. I think they're really, really important, and I'm actually calling on behalf of my parents who live on the Sunshine Coast. They live in a place called just outside of Madeira Park. And they're both between 78 and 80 years old. And they've just recently, it's funny that you guys are talking about this today because they were just recently telling me yesterday and the day before that their gym, where I don't exactly know where it's located, but it is supported by the CRDC, so the Sunshine Coast Regional District. And it is only open 4 days a week, and that's in a row. And so everybody from that area is trying to get there on those 4 days a week.
Right.
And she said the gym is so small, it's impossible for them to get in there.
Wow.
And another thing she said that's really hard when it's only open 4 days in a row is, especially being their age, they should be doing something physical every day, right? Doing
Sure.
some weight stuff every day for their health and longevity, and they have to go 3 days in a row. And sometimes they can't even get in the gym because it's so busy. So
Right.
access, because of the smallness of the recreation gym and the limited amount of hours it is open, is hugely impacting their health and longevity as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Mia, thank you very much for that. The concern for smaller communities, perhaps. What's the challenge there? And I know you speak for Burnaby, but when it comes to the size of communities to meet the demand, perhaps you have a smaller tax base.
For sure, we're fortunate in Burnaby that we have that tax base that we've been planning for years around through also collecting density bonusing, where some of the smaller communities don't have that privilege that we do, and so we've had the ability to collect the funds where we don't have to borrow at all to build these facilities. That's a very unique thing for a municipality, to build what we're building without borrowing or without going into debt, where that other municipalities just can't do that.
Mia, thank you for raising that and that issue on the Sunshine Coast, the gym only being open 4 days of the week, and so impacting access there. We have an email from Karen who writes, "We need more swimming pools. There should be a basic 25-meter pool in every neighborhood. This is not new. It is a very important community health need, good for kids, good for adults of all ages, especially with an aging population. And these people are fit and active and want regular pools, 25 or 50 meters, plus all the other facilities for aquafit, weightlifting classes, etc., but at least many more swimming pools." Thank you very much for that email. And Marnie writes, "P.S. The money saved for healthcare far outweighs the original money put into recreational facilities or walkways." Marjorie, thank you very much. BC Today at cbc.ca asking you, what are the recreation facilities that are needed in your community? What would promote healthy, active living? What are the spaces that would do that? Give us a call, 604-669-3733 or 1-800-825-5950. I'm joined by Burnaby City Councillor Daniel Tetrault. Jennifer is calling us from Vancouver. Hi, Jennifer. What are your thoughts on recreation facilities?
Oh, yeah. Hi. I'm just calling about what's going on with the Vancouver Aquatic Center. It's going to be closed for, I think it's something like 4 years now. There was a report done that confirmed that that a simple renewal of the roof would be possible. It would cost a fraction of the cost, and we could keep that 50-meter pool. Staff actually, I think Protect Our Vancouver Aquatic Center just sent out an email. They got some Freedom of Information requests back, and the original report about the roof renewal was actually hidden from the decision makers. So, you know, if we want to build other pools across the city, if we want to renew other pools, we can't be spending $175 million unnecessarily and then getting only a 25-meter pool. That's like, you know, kids train there. If they want to become competitive swimmers, competitive divers, they train down at that aquatic center. They'll be out of commission for 4 years. That's almost their entire high school. So I really hope that the commissioners put a pause on this so that they could look at this new renewal option that they never saw at the beginning that would, you know, be done in less than a year. And then we could keep that pool. We could use that, you know, $100 and some million to renew some more crumbling infrastructure, or maybe even build a new pool.
Such an ongoing issue in Vancouver. And as I referred to earlier, that 2025 audit that found that 72% of the city's 46 major recreation facilities were either in poor or very poor condition. And we did reach out to the city on that this morning. But Jennifer, that issue in Vancouver, I will continue to follow that as well. Thank you so much for the call. And we have an email here now, speaking of smaller communities. Carla writes, "We live in the small community of Caledon, and now they have decided to charge for the use of some of the amenities, such as tennis and pickleball courts, also the basketball court, which will have an impact on youth and children. I believe we pay enough taxes for this to be free of charge for the community." Carla, thank you for the email to bctoday@cbc.ca. We are talking about the state of recreation facilities, what's needed in your community, what would help promote active living. 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. And our next caller is in Nelson now. And John's on the line. Hi, John.
How are you, Michelle?
I am just fine. Thanks for calling in. And what do you think's needed in Nelson?
Well, we have the same kind of thing. A lot of the lower mainland areas come is we have not spent enough money over time on our buildings. We have a curling club right now that the city has just had an engineering report that says it's going to take $12 million to renovate or $16 million to rebuild. Now, this could actually be a multi-use facility for, we hear other amounts. But the city has recently done a survey that said citizens support small additional taxes for rec facilities. We really need it. We know what rec facilities do for health. This could be used for pickleball. It could be used for any indoor soccer. It could be used for many things other than curling if they would just put a plan forward. Instead, they plan to spend $2 million to tear it down.
Wow. And so what impact do you think that's going to have then, John?
Well, once again, it puts, it has a physical impact on the things people can do here in town.
Right.
Again, Nelson is a nice town, lots to do here, but
yes, absolutely.
Not as many rec activities. There are many rec activities here. I'm on the Recreational Sports Council locally here.
Okay.
And there are many activities here, baseball, that need more facilities, volleyball. And, Nelson is putting no interest. And part of the problem is that the responsibility here is split between the local city government and a rec district. There's a rec here that's Kootenay, West Kootenay wide. And some of the responsibility, for instance, our pool here in town is run by the rec district on land owned by the city. So it's a confusing, it does not help when those kind of responsibilities have overlapping government.
Right.
Oversight.
You have the cross jurisdiction.
So anyway, that's just I think the city council needs to put forward a plan to use that space. It's city land. They need to have a plan in place so that citizens can vote. Once again, their own recent polling showed did a survey, the rec district and the city did a survey on recreation recently, and they showed the needs for the city.
John,
and there are needs here.
There are needs there. John, thank you very much for the call from Nelson. And our next caller is Sarah in Quesnel now. What's needed when it comes to rec facilities in Quesnel?
Part of the problem with living in Quesnel, we just had a new arena built, which was fantastic. We do have some remarkable trails, but we have a recreation center, a pool, that is over 40 years old. And we've had referendums on them, and it's just barely been voted down. And this pool is 40 years old. They've done some upgrades to the gym. They've spent a lot of money on upgrades, and I just wonder at what point does the city just say we need to build a new one in spite of what maybe the referendum happened to say?
Right. Rather than keep paying into repairs.
Rather than just keep adding on to the repairs of it. And my thing is, at what point does the city just say, no, we're going to build a new one because it's over 40 years old?
Can I ask you, Sarah, what you use the rec center for? We're hearing a lot about what's needed. How important is it to you?
Very important. Aquatics. I have some disabilities where I'm not able to work out in other places, so I have to go to the pool for my aquatics. Mm-hmm. They have really good programs there. I'm not knocking the programs, but I'm, as far as my grandchildren go, there's been, there's a little small children's pool. There's a little slide. There's really not much for in the way of kids, and our population has really grown since COVID.
Yes, that is true. Sarah, thank you so much for the call. Thanks for sharing that as well.
Okay.
Our last, you take care. Bye-bye. Jennifer is next now in Victoria. Hi, Jennifer. How important is recreation and facilities, our facilities to you?
Absolutely. I just wanted to make a comment more than anything about how important the child minding was when I was a mother, and that it really saved my life, my mental health, my kids' lives. I needed to be able to go meet other moms, run with them, work out with them, and then go on with my day. And I can't emphasize how important the child minding was to my life.
Jennifer, what a really important point. Thank you for the call. I know I've seen child minding at, I think, Bonser as well. Have you heard a call from new parents in Burnaby?
Absolutely. And for those who don't know what child minding is, you can go to a rec center, drop your kid off for an hour or two and get your exercise in, and you have a qualified professional watching your kid. And we offer that at our community centers as well. And as the last caller said, truly, it's a game changer for people's health and well-being. And so we hear that all the time, and that's a priority in Burnaby as well.
One last call here from Varia in the North Shoe Swap. I have about a minute left, Varia, but what's needed where you live?
Hi. Well, I'd like to say that it would be great if the village of Chase, which is 20 minutes away from me in Lee Creek, could have a pool in their community. There's a rec center that is a hockey arena, ice arena, basically. It gets tons of use, but there's more space, and it would be awesome to be able to have a pool because it benefits people. Sometimes people's, they don't have water in their own house. They can go shower at a pool, soak in a pool, plus all walks of life come together with pools.
Yeah.
The rich, the poor, whatever. And apparently it was on the table years ago to build a pool as part of the whole master plan, but money and whatever, it hasn't actually happened. But I still hope that it will one day.
Thank you so much for the call and for speaking about the situation in Chase. Some other thoughts on this now. Rob writes from West Van, I believe $200 million to completely redo the pool is wasteful. Spend $25 million on fixing the roof and use the other $175 to upgrade or repair other facilities and hopefully build new ones. And Patricia writes, all well and good to upgrade recreational facilities. Yes, they need it. However, Kelowna had a long-term care facility which is in desperate need of fixing and improving, cancelled in the latest provincial budget. When you see how these people, mostly seniors, live, it is deplorable, and now it is on hold again. So those kinds of financial decisions that are put forth in front of folks like yourself, Daniel. But it's been a really good discussion around recreation facilities and the value they hold. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Daniel Tetrault is a Burnaby City Councillor, chair of Burnaby's Parks and Rec Committee.